Before we begin, take a deep breath, turn off the lights, and listen closely. Because tonight's story isn't about what hides in the dark. It's about what answers when you beg the darkness for help. This is the Pumpkin Child. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. You're going to want someone to talk to after this one. Her name was Evelyn Graves, 35 years old, married once, divorced once, and, as of last Halloween, completely alone. The small house she lived in sat at the end of Willow Creek Drive, a quiet, suburban lane where lawns were neat, porches were smiling, and every window glowed with a warm flicker of family life. Except hers. Her house was the one where the curtains stayed drawn, where neighbors passed by quickly, whispering about the woman who tried too long and got nothing back. For 7 years, Evelyn had been trying to have a child. 7 years of doctor visits, whispered prayers, broken promises, and quiet crying in the shower so no one would hear. But what broke her the most wasn't the failure. It was the silence. The silence of her home at night. The silence that echoed in rooms she'd painted yellow for a baby that never came. That silence was unbearable. Halloween night crept in quietly that year. The wind carried the scent of smoke and candy. Children laughed down the street, running from door to door, their tiny footsteps tapping against the pavement like raindrops. But for Evelyn, Halloween was a night she hated. She used to hand out candy once, used to smile at the costumes, used to dream of what her own child might look like dressed as a ghost or a pumpkin. Now she just turned off the porch light. She told herself she didn't care. But inside, the loneliness gnawed at her ribs like hunger. She sat by the window, cup of tea going cold in her hands, watching the little ones scurry by. Their laughter felt cruel somehow, until her eyes landed on something across the street. A small table, a pumpkin stand. A teenage boy was selling carved pumpkins for $2 each, misshapen, grinning things lit from within by cheap tea lights. And for a reason she couldn't explain, Evelyn got up, put on her coat, and walked outside. The boy's voice cracked when he greeted her. "Happy Halloween, ma'am. You want one?" She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Which one's left?" He pointed to the end of the table, a small, round pumpkin with a thin, fragile stem. It looked lonely, like it didn't belong among the rest. She paid for it and carried it home like something fragile. The air was colder than she remembered, even colder inside her house. That night, she set the pumpkin on her kitchen counter. Its orange skin glowed in the dim light. She stared at it for a long time, too long maybe. Then, for reasons she couldn't name, she fetched a knife. A small carving knife from a drawer she rarely opened. And she began to carve. Not a grin, not a face, but something softer. She gave it round eyes, a button nose, and a small, open mouth, almost as if it were breathing. Each cut felt deliberate, careful, sacred even. Like she wasn't carving into something, but carving something out. And when she was done, she whispered, "Please." Just that word. No long prayer. No ritual. Just please. Please don't let me be alone anymore. She placed a candle inside and lit it. The tiny flame flickered through the carved face. For a moment, the pumpkin looked alive. Midnight came quietly. The laughter outside faded. The wind grew colder, whispering through the eaves of the house. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, watching the candle burn low. And then, she heard it. Talp! A sound upstairs. She froze. The house was empty. She lived alone. But there was again. Talp, 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 like small, deliberate footsteps. Her heart stumbled in her chest. She turned off the light and listened harder. Nothing. Then, a soft creak came from the hallway above her. The one that led to the nursery. The room that had stayed locked for years. Her eyes darted to the pumpkin. Its flame flickered suddenly, then went still. She whispered to herself, "It's just the wind. Just the talp." One step closer, and then a voice. Soft, small, barely above a whisper. "Mama." Evelyn didn't move at first. She just sat there, frozen at the kitchen table, the candle's faint glow flickering against her wide, terrified eyes. The voice, that small voice, had come from upstairs, from the room that hadn't been opened since she packed away the crib. Her lips trembled as she whispered to herself, It's just in my head, just the wind." But her body knew better. Her body knew the rhythm of that sound. The tap, tap, tap of light footsteps. The pause. The small intake of breath, like something learning how to breathe. It was real. She stood up, her chair scraping softly across the tile. Every step toward the staircase felt heavier than the last. The candlelight from the kitchen stretched long shadows across the floor, each one swaying as if alive. Her hand gripped the stair rail. She listened again. Nothing. Only silence. Then, a faint giggle. High-pitched. Childlike. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She climbed the stairs slowly. Her breath came out in shallow, uneven gasps. And as she reached the top landing, she saw it. A faint orange glow spilling from underneath the nursery door. She hadn't lit any lights in there. Not for years. Her fingers shook as she turned the knob. It opened with a slow, aching creak. The room looked exactly as she'd left it. Dust covered the pale yellow walls. A mobile of tiny stars hung motionless above the crib. The curtains stirred gently in the cold air. And on the floor, right by the window, sat the pumpkin. The same pumpkin she'd carved downstairs. Its candle was burning again, flickering, casting soft, trembling light across the walls. But its face had changed. The mouth was no longer round and open. Now it curled upward in a faint, crooked smile. And the eyes, they seemed deeper, vet, as if something behind them was looking out. Evelyn's voice quivered. How did you get up here?" The pumpkin didn't answer, but from somewhere behind her, the closet maybe, came another soft giggle. A whisper followed, dragging through the silence like silk on wood. "Mommy!" Evelyn turned sharply. The closet door stood slightly ajar. Darkness breathed from the crack. Her heart hammered in her ears. She stepped closer, whispering, "Who's there?" No answer. She reached out and pulled the door open. Inside, only emptiness. Just old boxes, folded baby clothes, a forgotten rocking horse. But as she backed away, something brushed her ankle. Something cold. She gasped, stumbling back toward the crib. When she looked down, there were tiny footprints in the dust. Small, border, leading from the closet to the pumpkin. Evelyn's mind spun. She dropped to her knees, touching the prints, warm, still fresh. Then, faintly, another whisper. "Did you make me, Mommy?" The voice was behind her ear. She turned sharply. No one there. The pumpkin's smile seemed wider now. Her throat went dry. She stumbled out of the room, slamming the door shut behind her. Her back pressed to the hallway wall, she whispered over and over. "It's stress. It's grief. I am tired. I'm just tired." But from the other side of the door came a soft thud. Then another. Then a scraping sound, like small fingers dragging across the wood. She backed away, shaking, tears streaming down her face. The sound stopped. Then, a child's voice, sweet and hollow, spoke through the crack. "Don't you want to hold me, Mommy?" That night, Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen, every light on, her body trembling. The pumpkin, she thought. It had to be the pumpkin. She didn't know what she had done, but she'd asked for this. She'd begged for life in an empty house. And something had listened. She considered throwing it out, smashing it to pieces, but the thought of hurting it made her chest ache. The line between fear and love blurred, and she hated herself for it. So instead, she did nothing. She waited for morning. But when dawn came, and she crept upstairs again, the nursery door was open. And the pumpkin was gone. All that remained were the footprints. More of them this time. Tiny, dusty steps that led out of the room, down the hallway, and disappeared halfway down the stairs. Evelyn followed them, heart pounding. They stopped right at the bottom. And beside them, on the floor, lay one small, perfect handprint. Carved lines on her hardwood, as if someone had pressed too hard. She touched it, still warm. By evening, Evelyn thought she'd gone insane. She tried to distract herself. Washed dishes, cleaned the counters, folded laundry. But every so often, she'd feel it. A tug at her sleeve, a breath near her ear, a faint, childlike hum coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. When she finally dared to look behind her, nothing was there, except the faint smell of pumpkins. Sweet, rotting, lingering. That night, she set up a chair by the nursery door. She couldn't bring herself to open it again, but she couldn't leave it alone either. And at midnight, the light returned. A faint orange glow seeping out from underneath the door, accompanied by the sound of something moving, something crawling. Slowly, a shadow spread across the light, small, childlike. It stopped at the threshold, and then 3 gentle knocks, like a child asking to be let in. Evelyn's lips trembled. "Please go away," the voice on the other side whispered. "But Mommy, I'm already home." The next morning, Evelyn woke in the hallway chair, stiff and shivering. The door to the nursery was open again. She didn't remember opening it. She didn't even remember falling asleep. Inside, the room was bright, morning light spilling through the curtains, dust floating like tiny ghosts. And there, sitting in the middle of the floor, was a child. A little boy, barefoot, wearing one of the baby shirts she'd packed away years ago. His skin was pale as candle wax. His hair, straw-colored, soft, sticking in every direction. But his eyes were orange, the same glowing amber as the pumpkin she'd carved. He looked up at her and smiled. "Good morning, Mommy." Evelyn froze in the doorway, unable to speak. Her heart flooded with something she didn't want to name. He stood and wobbled toward her, tiny feet padding over the dusty floor. He reached out his hand, small fingers curling around hers. His touch was cold, but real. She whispered, "Who are you?" He tilted his head. "You made me." The words hit her like a blow. I didn't mean to." "You said please." He smiled wider. "So I came." The way he said it, simple, innocent, made her chest ache. He looked no older than 5. Perfect, exactly as she'd always imagined her son would be. But when she looked closer, she saw faint cracks in his skin. Thin, jagged lines running along his arms and neck. And beneath them, orange light pulsed. Evelyn backed away, whispering, "You shouldn't be here." He frowned. "Don't you want me, Mommy?" Her throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to run, but she couldn't. She'd asked for this. She'd begged the darkness for a child, and now it had given her one. The boy tilted his head. "I can be good. I can stay. You won't be lonely anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. The kitchen clock ticked faintly somewhere downstairs, grounding her in the awful reality of the moment. She whispered, "You're not real." He blinked slowly, then smiled again. The cracks in his cheeks widened, orange light leaking through like fire behind thin porcelain. "Does it matter?" he asked. Days passed, or maybe it was weeks. Time lost its shape in that house. Evelyn stopped going outside. She didn't answer calls, didn't go to work. The boy was always there now, playing quietly, humming strange, wordless tunes. Sometimes she'd find him sitting by the window, drawing shapes in the condensation. Other times, he'd vanish for hours, and she'd find small handprints in odd places. The fridge door, the hallway mirror, the inside of her bedroom window. Every night, the smell of pumpkin grew stronger. Sweet, spoiled, thick enough to taste in the air. She told herself she'd imagined everything. That grief had driven her to hallucination. But then she'd see him, standing at the foot of her bed in the dark, his eyes glowing faintly, watching her, smiling. One night, she found him sitting on the kitchen counter, staring into the sink. He said softly, "You shouldn't have blown out the candle, Mommy." She froze. "What?" "The light keeps me warm." That night, she relit it. She didn't know why. Fear, maybe, or love. And when the candle's flame caught, the boy's skin seemed to soften. The cracks faded. He smiled again. For a few days, he almost seemed normal. He laughed. He ran. He called her Mommy in that small, perfect voice that filled the empty house with warmth. But Evelyn began to notice something else. Every time the candle burned lower, he grew weaker. Every time she replaced it, the lines in his skin deepened, like roots spreading through flesh. And when the moon turned full that week, he said something that made her blood run cold. "Tomorrow's the harvest moon," he said. "It's when I go back." Evelyn dropped the dish she was washing. "What do you mean, go back?" He looked up at her, those glowing eyes unblinking. "Back to where you found me." She whispered, You can't leave." His smile faded. You made a wish. Wishes in, Mommy. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the kitchen table, the candle burning low inside the old pumpkin. The boy slept upstairs, curled under a blanket that once belonged to no one. Outside, the wind rose. Leaves scraped against the siding. The moon hung low and full, orange as flame. She stared at the pumpkin's flickering face and whispered, I won't lose you too. The candle trembled. From upstairs, she heard small footsteps. Then the boy's voice. Mommy, he was crying. She ran up the stairs. The nursery door was open. The room was darker than before. Cold air swept through the window, rattling the mobile. The boy stood by the crib, trembling. His small hands were covered in cracks, glowing fiercely. He looked at her with those wide, orange eyes. I don't want to go back. Evelyn rushed forward, clutching him to her chest. He was cold, his body trembling like a dying flame. I'll fix it, she whispered. I'll keep the candle burning forever. But he shook his head. It's too late. You can't keep something that doesn't belong here. The wind howled. The candle downstairs flickered out. A scream tore from the boy's throat, a sound that didn't belong in this world. His body arched, glowing cracks spreading across his skin. Evelyn held him tighter, sobbing, Please, please don't go. But the light was leaving him. His body turned lighter, softer, until he began to crumble like ash. His last whisper barely reached her ear. Don't forget me, Mommy. And then, he was gone. Morning came quietly. The pumpkin sat cold and blackened on the kitchen table. The candle inside had burned down to wax and smoke. Evelyn didn't leave the house for days. Neighbors said they heard her talking to someone inside. Softly, lovingly. And when they finally knocked on her door, weeks later, no one answered. Through the window, they could see her sitting at the table. Hands folded, eyes fixed on something in front of her. The old pumpkin. But what made them step back, what made them call the police, was that the pumpkin's face had changed again. It was smiling, and its eyes were glowing faintly. When officers finally entered the house, they found Evelyn's chair empty. No sign of her anywhere. Only a trail of small, dusty footprints leading upstairs to the nursery. And on the wall, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, He just wanted to come home. If you made it this far, look behind you before you turn off the lights. Because sometimes, when the harvest moon is full, and a heart is lonely enough to whisper please, something might still be listening. If you enjoyed tonight's story, The Pumpkin Child, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know, would you make the wish? Good night.